Okay, Dave, so now that we've learned how to hire people, how to hire contractors, how to hire employees, if you guys haven't watched those videos, make sure to go watch them. They're the previous videos to this one. How do I fire someone after I screwed up? Or they screwed up?
Nobody likes making somebody else feel uncomfortable or unpleasant, but you have to get rid of people that are not appropriate for you. There is something of an art form in this. I will start by telling the story of my favorite firing in my entire career. There was this guy. He was a nice guy, but he was not appropriate for the company. We had mishired him because he was a friend of the CEO's,
Yeah.
to be honest. We had to let him go. However, he was Chinese, which is relevant here. His family was from Hong Kong. His father was moving the family fortune out of Hong Kong as the Chinese communists were about to take it over to Canada, where the family was relocating to Vancouver. And he was the oldest son, which I knew. So in a conversation tangential to his work, I reminded him of the duties of the elder son of a Chinese family to do the family business and help it. And he went and did it. He left to go work with his father for transferring the family fortune. And his family put $1 million into our next round of financing.
Wow.
That's a good firing. Most of them don't go like that.
Yes.
You will often have to detail how a person is screwing up,
Yeah.
especially if there's some sort of protective class. But you should do this for anyone. What have they done that you didn't want them to do? What have they not done that you've directed them to do? Have they done something dishonest or just incompetent?
Yeah. And I remember you telling me about the big threes, right? The three reasons to fire people. And it was money,
Money.
not having enough funding.
Yeah.
Kind of explain a little bit about that.
Okay, sometimes you will have to get rid of people that you don't want to get rid of. You have to do layoffs, downsizing, because the company doesn't have the money. And I've been in that position twice in my life, where I had to let people go because I didn't have the money to pay them. And I had to let good people go. Now, everyone in the industry knows that downsizing is an opportunity to get rid of deadwood. But that doesn't mean that everybody you get rid of is deadwood. And the problem is you simply have to choose the ones that will do the least damage to the company, not because they're not competent, but because maybe they're working on something you can afford not to work on now. And then you have to let them go. If the person is a good employee, you do everything you can to find them another position. You call people you provide them with glowing references and explain right out, this is a finance thing, had nothing to do with their inability. We would have loved to have hired them, keep them, and we would have. You do all of those things to support the good ones. Now, then there's the not good ones. And they fall into two categories in particular, the incompetent and the immoral.
Yeah, so I remember you telling me about, not appropriate, but not a bad person. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yes, and not appropriate, maybe you simply made a mistake in hiring, or the company's needs have changed. Both of those are legitimate reasons for the person not being appropriate. If you hire a person with an expertise in this, that doesn't mean they can transfer over here if you've changed your direction. And you may have to get rid of them because of that. Those people, the not appropriate but not bad people, fall into the same category of the previous one, in which you do everything you can to find them a new position, and you're completely honest about why they are now unemployed. And we all know that. We all talk about the people in business who are hiring understand that, because all of us have been through money shortages or change of directions or investors that insist we go one way that we weren't going. All of those things happen, and we all understand it. Then there's the dishonest category. Now, if the person is stealing from the company, that's easy. It's usually not quite like that. The worst I ever saw with that, and I will be very careful here disguising anything, I had a fairly senior person in the company who was very emphatic on his pursuing a particular customer, such that when the customer was in a deadline, he threatened the customer with stopping work if he didn't pay us more money, without, of course, discussing this with me or anybody else in the company. And I fired him on the spot. When I found out about that from the customer, I asked him if it was true. He said yes, and I fired him on the spot. Because that is unethical. That's really unethical. And he was gone. And I didn't have any problem with getting rid of him. And it didn't bother me to get rid of him. It was tense, but it was not, it had to happen. Then there are the in-between and the squishies and they've said things that weren't true, but there you simply have to decide, are they worth the money you're paying them, and do you get out of them what you need or not? But if they are in a position to represent the company in any way, anything other than perfect ethics is unacceptable, or should be, in any company that a decent person wants to work for.
Yeah. So that's mainly the violations. So if they have certain violations towards the company policy or towards your ethics, that is not okay. So if I have an employee who's going out and scamming customers, telling them, oh, this is $30,000 when realistically we charge $5,000 for it, or he is doing certain things with customers to that are not appropriate, that's someone I should fire on the spot.
Yeah, you fire him on the spot.
I don't.
And you won't get any legal. I mean, they may threaten lawsuits and things like that. They will get nowhere under those circumstances.
Should I, if I'm put in a position like that, is that a conversation I should have with them? Like, hey, this is not okay, or should I just go straight to firing them?
It depends on what it is. If it's actually criminal behavior, you get rid of them on the spot. If it's stretching the ethics, like overcharging, for example, overcharging at the start, changing in the middle of a program, that's unethical. But if it's it's a gray area. You say, this is the company policy, we don't do that. And we're not going to do that. If they go along with you, you forget about it. If they don't go along with you, and especially if they're working behind your back, then you probably have grounds for dismissal.
What if someone is stealing my customers?
You mean they have a side business going and they're also working for you? You get rid of them instantaneously, and you explain to the customers that they're unethical. Only you don't, of course, say that. It's the same thing as the interview process I mentioned before. Yeah. There's words you use.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, that's good. And then you mentioned a fourth one that we never talked about, and it was letting a person go for their own good.
Yes. That's a very good one. I have done that with my own son.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't, because he didn't work for me. He worked for somebody who worked for me. But it was the right thing to do. He was not happy. He was not doing well. He was tremendously gifted, and he, worked. The guy that he actually worked for worked with him. It wasn't going to work, so he was let go. And he promptly went somewhere else and has completely flourished at that place, because it wasn't anything wrong with him and it wasn't anything wrong with us. It was just a mismatch, even though he was my son. And I've seen that happen many times before. But they don't want to go because they are attached, or they're lazy, or they're just inertia. You have to sometimes give them a kick out the door, like you do with kids in general. Yeah. Sometimes the bird needs to leave the nest. And those are difficult, but if you keep that the person's own welfare is important, then that's what you do when you have to.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I have learned a lot about firing people and hiring people. So now whenever I go to hire people, I have a lot more of an understanding of what to look for. I don't want people that will cause me issues when I'm actually firing them. And I don't want to fire people or hire people that I'm going to need to fire. So thank you, Dave. I really appreciate, the advice that you've given me. And I'm sure everyone at home right now who is looking to actually become something and scale their business appreciates it just as much as me. So if you guys have questions or anything that you want us to make a video about, comment them down below. We are more than happy to make videos on them. Dave is more than happy to make videos on them. And we'll see you guys in the next one. And if you haven't watched the videos on hiring people, you must watch those to understand this one. We will see you guys in the next one.
Thank you.